Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Friday Montgomery County House Delegation meeting. We have two speakers this morning, or two groups speaking to us. And we also have a little bit of legislative business to deal with. Pleased to be joined by our Senate colleague, Chair of the Senate Delegation, Senator Kramer. Thanks for being here, Senator. But we're going to start with Montgomery College. I'm not sure if the interim president, Dr. Dukes, has gotten back in, but we do have Dr. Brintnell, the first vice chair of the Montgomery College Board of Trustees, and we're also joined by a Montgomery College student, Martha Danielle Melbourne Sanho, whose name I'm sure I just butchered, so I apologize. So why don't I turn it over, if Dr. Dukes isn't here, to Dr. Brintnell to go ahead and give us an update on Montgomery College.
All right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Michael Brintnell. I'm the first vice chair of the Montgomery College Board of Trustees. And I bring greetings from the entire board and from our board chair, Mike Knapp. I'm pleased to be here with Dr. Dukes when we can reconnect Dr. Dukes. Given the winds last night, I'm surprised that anybody's wires are still connected. And with one of our students, Mart Mudalabem Sanjal. We'll make some remarks in a moment. She will, but Dr. Dukes and I are going to go first, and if we get her in, because as you know, our students always steal the show, and they're such a hard act to follow that we thought we better get our word in before we hear from them, though she may in fact step up next. But I see that Dr. Dukes is with us, so we're back in sequence. I want to start, in fact, to express the board's appreciation to Dr. Dukes for stepping in as the interim president. Interim leadership is a difficult task under any circumstances, and to do it in turbulent times is even more complex. And she has made it work for all. She has led towards the difficult decisions, and she has made everyone effective. And I want to express our appreciation to her for that. And speaking of transitions, our next president, Dr. Jermaine Williams, will be starting on February 28th, which is just practically tomorrow. And we're just very excited about that. I had the privilege of chairing the search committee, which was really a very affirming process. And the board is delighted with this outcome. Dr. Williams brings a commitment to student success. He brings a commitment to opening doors for all students. He brings in for all residents of Montgomery County. He brings a commitment to fueling the economy, not only economic opportunity for our graduates, but the benefits that they then bring to the county as a whole. And he looks forward to meeting all of you. He understands how connected we are. He's a man who reaches out, and he's a man who listens. So I think you will find the opportunities to work with him and to engage with him very rewarding. Before I turn this over to Dr. Dukes, I do want to express the board's appreciation on several accounts. And one is how grateful we are for the infusion of new funds for the operating budget. This moves towards the goal of state aid being 30% of the operating budget. And that revenue just makes an extremely important difference for our students, both in the way we can engage with college programs, but also the opportunity to keep tuition flat for a third year in a row for our students at a time when nothing could be more important for them but out-of-pocket expenses. And I want to thank you for your commitment to major projects like the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science building. This building is absolutely essential for our students. It's essential for our mission, and in that sense, essential really for the county. And it's going up as we speak. My notes say steel is coming out of the ground. And in fact, if this is the sort of thing that really engages you, we hope you can join us at a topping off celebration on March 11th, which is itself almost around the corner, where we will recognize this accomplishment. We'll keep you posted, and with luck, there'll be cake as well. So hope we can see you there. So I want to thank you on behalf of the board for being champions of the college. We can always count on the Montgomery delegation. We appreciate your support and we appreciate your vision. And we appreciate your time today. So let me turn this discussion over then to Dr. Dukes, and thank you all so very much.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the delegation, certainly Trustee Britnall, and our student whom you'll have the opportunity to hear from just a little later. It's been a pleasure for me to serve Montgomery College in this interim capacity. It should be of no surprise to any of you that Dr. Pollard and I were co-advocates in so many things during our time together in leadership here in the state of Maryland. So the geographic boundary that separated us, Montgomery County from Prince George's County, certainly did not separate us as we walked the halls of the General Assembly on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of students who are attending community colleges in our great state. So I want to, that was just a moment to allow me to express my gratitude for having served here for what will end up being just about 7 months. I will tell you all that when I was asked to come to Montgomery College, I too thought that we were on the other end of the pandemic. So we've had to make a lot of major decisions here at the college, but thank goodness that we were supported by local leadership and certainly our elected leadership across the General Assembly. So the one thing that we know is that we can always count on the Montgomery College, the Montgomery County, delegation to place a priority on education, and that's from pre-K all the way up to post-secondary. We have to remember that it was Delegate Heller and Senator Hogan who sponsored legislation to improve the community college funding formula, and that all of you have been fighting every day, every year in order to fulfill that promise. And this year, the efforts finally paid off. Montgomery College will receive $13.5 million because of the change in the CAVE formula. And we will be eternally grateful for that as we continue to move forward. But you all know that our commitment dates back just about 75 years. We are celebrating our 75th year of offering post-secondary education to the residents of Montgomery County. So we've celebrated many notable alumni: Morgan Wooten, Saul Graham, Julie Varetti, and even Cheruti Mystery, who is a biomedical engineer at the Food and Drug Administration. But you know what we have to do is look at how this pandemic has disrupted the world, and it's disrupted our institution as well. Community colleges and our students have not been immune to the seismic social disruptions that really have been almost like tsunamis. So we know that post-secondary education leads to economic mobility, but fewer students have enrolled at community colleges across the state of Maryland, and particularly low-income students. And Montgomery College has not been immune to that. We know that the farms rate at the Montgomery County Public Schools continues to hover around 33%. But the number of Pell Grant students at Montgomery College continues to drop. So we've got to figure out where is the intersectionality of what is going on, and how can we dig in deeper in order to support our students. So we also know that 3 out of 4 jobs in Montgomery County require a degree. And this is what's most worrisome. If we are losing students, then they're certainly not getting degrees, and we're not meeting the promise that we made. So together, we know that we have to take action to once again help students know that a community college education is within their reach and within their grasp. So what we know is that if we're educating community college students, we can fill the vacancies that exist in the workplace and the job market. One of the ways we hope to do that is with the first step towards building an educational center in East County. And we know that an eventual campus will be a strong first step. And that is the direction in the road that we're on today. We also know that affordability will be the key. Our students have benefited from the 3 rounds of federal funding that have come in. We've probably awarded students either directly or through the reduction or elimination of debt close to $25 million over the last several years. But we also know that thanks to the infusion in state aid, we can hold tuition flat in fiscal year 23. So the recommendation we've made to the Board of Trustees is that we not increase tuition, and the Board of Trustees has accepted that recommendation. So as we think about what's next, what we also want to focus on is transfer for our students. And we are so grateful to Delegate Solomon for his dogged dedication to taking down the opportunity barriers for community colleges students to transfer and get that degree. The important thing about that is that they transfer without loss of credit as long as they are on the continuum for their program of interest. So we're going to ask that you please support his bill, Transfer with Success Act 2.0, and we ask that you continue to think outside of the box. Work with us, with our colleagues with my colleagues, I should say, across the state of Maryland and yours, so that we can be solution focused. This pandemic has opened up many things that even for me as a 40-year veteran in higher education that I never would have expected and certainly did not expect to experience. So we can't be stuck in the institutional paradigms of yesteryear. We have got to think about what the future means, not just for Montgomery College, Montgomery County, but certainly for the state of Maryland. So we want to ensure that we can speed up the process for our students to a degree and to the front lines of our economy. It happens in the states of California, Washington, Florida, and 21 other states. So we believe that Maryland can do it too. Now I'm going to ask that you take a moment to hear from Martha, who is a Montgomery College student, about her hopes for a baccalaureate degree. And I'll turn it to you, Martha.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jerks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Smart Medalubem Sanjal. I live in Silver Spring, and I'm studying business in Montgomery College. I hope to transfer to earn my bachelor's degree so I can become an accountant in Montgomery County. But I am worried about making sure I can transfer. That's why I joined the Montgomery College Pre-Transfer Academy, which is a faculty-led program that helps students prepare for transfer. They provide us with tools to navigate the road ahead of us. But I'm worried about managing my classwork while not only completing my applications, but also reading the fine print, which are specific transfer rules for each of the 7 institutions that I will apply to. It is hard to understand all the requirements, and it's time consuming to make sure I've got the right information. Additionally, it's frustrating that it's not straightforward. For example, some colleges accept some credit or course while others don't. I really don't have enough money to have taken a class at Montgomery College just to be required to take it again once I transfer to University of Maryland in College Park or another school. While I'm glad to get help from the Pre-Transfer Academy faculties, I wish I didn't need to dedicate time to it. I wish that the work that I accomplished in Montgomery College is valued and accepted at Maryland schools. Please make it easier for community college students, for students like me, to transfer, save money and time, and begin their career. Thank you for listening.
And thank you so much. And as I conclude, I want to thank each one of you for your deep commitment to meeting the needs for modern classrooms, labs, and libraries for Montgomery County's community college students. I want to thank you for taking the time out to hear from one of our students for whom transfer is critically important. And we don't need to have students who lose credits when they transfer to any one of our public or even private institutions in the state of Maryland. And then I'll ask you to mark your calendars for Friday, March 11th. We know that you'll be in session, and maybe we'll figure out some ways to make this happen, but to join Dr. Jermaine Williams, the Board of Trustees, and I may be there as well for the topping off ceremony for the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science Building. It's been a pleasure to serve Montgomery County. It's been a pleasure to serve the students of Montgomery College. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you so much, especially to our student for being with us. Do any of my colleagues have any questions from Montgomery College, as long as we still have them with us? Great. Well, thank you again for making the time. And Dr. Dukes, thank you for the past 7 months of interim service that you've given the county. We really appreciate it. Colleagues, I neglected to recognize some pages we have joining us today on the call serving the General Assembly this week. From the Great District 16, Walter Johnson High School, Zinni Lau, thank you for being here. From District 15, Churchill High School, Caitlin Moon. And from District 17 and my alma mater, Richard Montgomery, go Rockets, Jack Bodmer. So thank you all for being with us this morning and your service to the General Assembly. We're going to take this a little bit out of order and do our hopefully quick item of legislative business prior to hearing from the chair of the planning board, Casey Anderson. Let me just provide a little bit of context to the extent I can. And we have happily Amy Salmon from the Board of License Commissioners on the call for anything I mess up or any technical questions. But as many of you know, the town of Kensington has a slightly differentiated system of alcohol licenses where they have their own sort of subcap under state law. Relatively recently, the town and an applicant there, a restaurant that is hoping to expand to include alcohol sales, realized they were at the cap and went to the District 18 delegation asking for a statutory fix. And as this group knows very well, our statutory fixes take a long time and our process starts very early. Really like the summer before a legislative session is when you have to start getting things to drafting, which I know can be very frustrating. So in order to try to facilitate this business in Kensington, we worked with the county on one of their alcohol bills that's already passed the delegation, that's already pending in Economic Matters, that's already scheduled for Alcohol Day on Monday, because we have the Economic Matters bill hearings on local alcohol bills on Monday, to amend a bill to, at least for a little bit, take care of this issue in Kensington to allow this business, if this bill gets it through the process and becomes law, to operate. I think this obviously raises questions about this Kensington system that we have. And we should revisit those, but probably not in the form of an amendment to another bill. And I hope the District 18 delegation will take that up because this is a little bit of a frustrating situation. But I don't think, because we have early deadlines, we should hold up the ability of this business to, do what it wants to do if the Board of License Commissioners find that they're qualified to hold a license. So that's the context. There is an amendment that you all received last night. The amendment is to HB 233, which is the Montgomery County Alcoholic Beverages Class 7 Microbrewery License Bill that we passed unanimously several weeks ago, thanks to the efficient work of Chair Chi and her committee. So similar to when a standing committee has one of our bills and I go and get a vote from you all on that amendment, we're basically asking for an advisory vote here on an amendment that we would send to the Economic Matters Committee that would increase from 8 to 20, I believe. I don't have the amendment text in front of me, the amount of licenses that Kensington is permitted to have if the Board of License Commissioners approves it. So with that, let me ask the Vice Chair if he has anything he would like to add on the topic, since he's the one who's been working this issue very hard with Delegates Shetty and Solomon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think I speak on behalf of the entire District 18 delegation. It's unfortunate that it takes an act of the General Assembly to help one business and to alter the Kensington alcohol regime. I think the message is heard very loud and clear by the District 18 delegation, by the town of Kensington, of the need to just take Delegate Resnick's advice and finally rip the Band-Aid off to go with the county system. So I think you'll see a bill to do exactly that next year. But before us, we have a business that's trying to open that we want to help. So with that, we ask for your support on this amendment to another bill to make this happen. Thank you.
Great. So Mr. Vice Chair, do you want to move that amendment?
I move the amendment.
Second.
Delegate Shetty, second. All right, is there any discussion on this lovely topic?
I just want to say that I think I can die happy now.
You got to wait a year, Delegate Resnick, so don't go prematurely. Great.
And we still have to repeal prohibition.
We're working on that.
You can't die happy yet, Delegate Resnick.
I'm working on that.
Okay, so I think I'm going to try to do this by voice vote. All in favor of us sending this amendment on to Economic Matters, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to be recorded in the negative? Does anybody need to abstain? Great. Thank you all for your cooperation on that. Rebecca Stryer will make sure that Chair Chi has all the information she needs for Alcohol Day on Monday in the Economic Matters Committee. And with that, colleagues, we can now turn to the Chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board, Casey Anderson, for his yearly presentation to us. And thank you for sitting through that, Chair Anderson.
Thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen real quickly if that's all right.
We're getting a little echo from you, I think, unless it's just me.
I don't know if I can do anything about that, but I'm doing my best. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Very good. It's great to see you all. It's been a while. I think you probably have heard about Thrive Montgomery 2050. If any of you have been on the doors, it's certainly become a flashpoint. I think it's probably less controversial on the merits than you might have heard about. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what's in this plan and why it matters. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Mr. Chairman, I'm really sorry. There's a lot of concern about our ability to hear you.
Okay. I can try to log in from my other connection if this is not working.
It's just a very difficult echo.
Let me see
Mr.
what I-
Chairman, when this happens, sometimes it might be best if the individual logs out and then logs right back in using the same computer and everything else. It usually clears up.
Yeah, let me see what I can do about this real quickly. Bear with me.
Correll's hoping to be 2 for 2 today on corrections for the delegation.
I appreciate that.
Trying to be helpful.
I'll do some announcements while we're waiting for Chair Anderson. First of all, we're working on scheduling a delegation picture, which we're going to try to do on the front steps of the State House and not inside, so we don't have to have masks on. We're going to try to schedule that for a day we know we're going to be there for votes so that people aren't making a special trip to Annapolis. And then you all should have received a save the date for the staff appreciation party, which will be via Zoom again. That'll be the Friday morning after crossover. So March 25th, I believe, is that date. And we have adequate funds in the Sunshine Fund to buy gift cards again for the staff and interns who participate. So keep an eye out for that. Casey, are you back with us?
Yes.
I don't think that solved the problem.
It's worse.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I think that's a little bit better.
Okay, I apologize for that. I've just got I'm told I can't share a screen while other participant is sharing, so I'm going to have to pick myself up on the other connection.
I'm enjoying this tour of the park and planning facilities.
Yes, this is where I scribble on my whiteboard. So that's the inner recesses of my mind behind me there. Okay. Have we got us? Have you seen my slides? Okay, as I was saying, Thrive Montgomery County has become controversial for reasons that are understandable, maybe some that are a little bit less easy to figure out. But I want to tell you about what's in this plan and why it matters. But first, I want to cover a few things that are unrelated to Thrive that you might be interested in. First, we have imposed a vaccine mandate at the commission, unlike our county governments, and we're proud to say that we've achieved a 98% vaccination rate across the commission since we implemented that mandate in November. We've lost a few employees, but I can tell you that we view this as a success, that we've experienced relatively little attrition and successfully protected our employees and the people around them. I offer that, I think, as an example for how successfully a vaccine mandate can be implemented. So I just give that for your information. If you want more information, I'd be happy to talk to you about how we did that. Secondly, cannabis. As a large employer, we're watching the recreational legalization discussion closely, and we have some ideas and concerns about that issue. Again, please let me know offline if you'd like to talk more about that. And last, I want to thank you all for your support for our bond bills in the past. Almost every one of you has helped us in one way or another with the bond bill over the last few years, and we have bond bills in every district, I believe, in Montgomery County now that we're ready for funding and hope to get those approved and constructed. So what is in Thrive Montgomery? There are 6 chapters. The first 3 outline how development and growth are supposed to be accommodated. Compact growth, the footprint for development should be kept tight. We should avoid sprawl and preserve land for agricultural and land conservation. Complete communities explains what types of things should be happening in each neighborhood and district, what types of uses and amenities and infrastructure. Third, design, arts, and culture gets into the details of how buildings and blocks are designed, things like architecture, things like environmental management features. The last 3 chapters of the plan fill in the blanks. Housing covers everything you could ever want to discuss about how housing is financed, built, what size it is, how big the lots are, what kind of buildings materials are used, etc. Transportation integrates mobility recommendations and is relatively self-explanatory. And the Parks and Recreation chapter shows how public space can support not only environmental management and recreation, but also social engagement and public health. Thrive is a general plan with an emphasis being on the general. A lot of people who have issues with this plan want to make it a very detailed set of prescriptions for whatever topic they're most concerned about. That's understandable. But a plan of this type is a framework for other plans and therefore cannot be that detailed. It needs to be implemented with other plans over a period of several years. So we often get questions. How come there's no chapter on the environment? How come there's no chapter on job creation? How come there's no chapter on racial justice? The answer is that equity, environmental sustainability, and economic competitiveness are the ends. The chapters I just described are the means in land use, transportation, and public infrastructure to achieve those goals. So Thrive makes 72 recommendations about racial and socioeconomic equity, 57 recommendations about the environment, 39 recommendations about economic development. Far from missing these things, they are integrated in every aspect of the plan. In fact, almost every single paragraph of the plan touches on one of those 3 topics. Thrive is a comprehensive land use plan, but it's not a comprehensive plan for everything that local government can do. So what does Thrive say about equity? The key ideas in Thrive include restoring the East County and the Route 29 corridor as a growth corridor is important to racial and socioeconomic integration. It is important to emphasize walkability, bike and pedestrian safety, because that's also an equity issue. More housing for everyone of all types in every part of the county. All of these are integral to more racially and socially equitable outcomes. Thrive includes extensive discussion of the history of how redlining, restrictive covenants, discriminatory lending, exclusionary zoning, and other land use practices have in the past and even now in the present helped to create and reinforce racist structures and perpetuate inequity. More housing in particular of every kind is essential to gains in racial and socioeconomic equity. And Urban Lands Institute, Brookings Institute, many scholars and thinkers at the national level have documented how housing is so essential to advancing a cause of equity as well as economic development and environmental sustainability. And Thrive is aligned with those best practices and thinking. I want to talk a little bit more about this because housing is so central to the equity goals. I've heard even our county executive has said Thrive doesn't have anything in it about racial equity. I submit to you, if you just read the housing chapter, you will see how incorrect that is. This list, and I won't read them all, describes just the top 10 list. Here's 5 on this slide, here's 5 on the other, describing specifically how this plan addresses affordable housing, subsidized housing, attainable housing, market rate housing, housing financing in order to provide support for housing at every income level, different construction types to make housing more affordable and less expensive to build, increasing the number of income restricted affordable housing units, as well as market rate housing. Every strategy that anybody in the profession has named was considered, and almost every single one of them was incorporated in this plan. And that's why a coalition of affordable housing providers and advocates in Montgomery County, Montgomery Housing Alliance, which includes Action Montgomery, Montgomery Housing Partnership, other providers and advocates for affordable housing have recognized that Thrive includes all the key tools to address gentrification, displacement, and make Montgomery County a more affordable place for everyone. Let's talk about some of the other dimensions of racial equity. Every single chapter, as I said, touches on some aspect of racial equity. Schools, trying to address the East-West divide and improve the socioeconomic and racial integration of neighborhoods and create economic opportunity across neighborhoods, which is essential to integrated and equal access to high-quality schools. Transportation, I mentioned walking and biking, also connecting less served areas, equity-focused areas with transit. Complete communities, Vision Zero I already mentioned. Communication networks, building better high-speed telecommunications access to connect people who are physically as well as socially and economically isolated to opportunities, to the educational resources. Parks and recreation, applying equity tools to analyze the equity and fairness of capital investments and programs in parks and recreation. Transit is an underappreciated aspect of equity. I think a lot of people understand the housing connection, but this is an image that shows the commute shed or jobs that are within 30, 45, and 60 minutes of Long Branch today. On the right, you see the jobs that would be within 30, 45 minutes to 60 minutes of Long Branch with the purple line. Now, a lot of people focus, and not inappropriately, on the potential for transit to cause gentrification and displacement. But I think the thing to keep in mind is the reason transit is associated with gentrification and displacement is because there's not enough of it. There aren't enough neighborhoods that are connected. And therefore, when you have transit in a new neighborhood, people bid up the price of the real estate in that neighborhood. Thrive supports extending transit to more communities in the county, particularly with bus rapid transit and other means. So there's not a scarcity of transit to drive gentrification and displacement, and instead transit opens economic opportunities and physical access to neighborhoods that were previously left behind. What does Thrive say about the environment? That growth should be compact, that we should avoid sprawl, not a controversial idea. That growth should happen along major corridors, which lays the foundation for focused development to create mixed-use, vibrant communities. These are ideas which really have been best practices in planning for quite some time. In fact, they were prefigured in the 1964 general plan, but Thrive elaborates them, reinforces them, provides some state of the practice updates to those concepts. And it's also essential to environmental performance. This is the proposed growth map. It looks very much like the growth map that was in the 1964 plan. The one difference, you'll see the lightest area is the place which is designated as more appropriate for more development. The darkest blue area, the ag reserve, the outlying areas, the county are recommended as places where growth should be restricted or even prohibited. So if you're familiar with the 1964 plan, you'll see this looks pretty close to what they thought about in 1964. In between, in 1993, the Route 29 corridor was read out of the plan by people that didn't want to see more development in East County. The other thing that's different is that you'll see the George Avenue corridor is in the plan now. That wasn't there in 1964 because we didn't have the red line. So this plan syncs up the growth pattern with reality and also corrects what we believe was a fundamental mistake to write the East County out in the early 90s. It's very important to understand the connection between compact growth, and environmental protection. It's not all just about building stuff next to transit, all that's ideal. This map shows what vehicle miles traveled per household in every part of the county. The red areas have less vehicle miles traveled, the blue areas have more. What you see is that even in neighborhoods that aren't served by high quality transit, the closer you are to the core, the less driving you do. So even without transit, compact growth is essential to environmental protection, independent of the land conservation benefits of preventing sprawl and preserving green space, open space, land for agriculture. Compact growth and infill also improve sustainability. Some of you have seen some of my slideshows before, familiar with the slide. To the left, the shopping center that is now known as the Pike and Rose development was a sea of asphalt with no stormwater management protection. To the right, what it looks like today, 72% of a 2-year storm is infiltrated or absorbed on the site with green roofs, vegetation, underwater basins which collect stormwater, treat it, infiltrate it on the site, or treat it before it leaves the site. Dramatic improvement in environmental performance, even though you have a lot more stuff built on that site. Counterintuitive, but fundamentally important to in progress on stormwater management. Again, chapter by chapter, every single chapter includes specific recommendations and strategies for improving the environmental sustainability of existing growth and correcting for the shortcomings of environmental regulation in the past. And I won't read that, but you can take a look in your ample free time. Support for Thrive on racial equity in the environment. Montgomery Fall, Audubon Natural Society, Montgomery Housing Alliance released a statement just last week in response to some criticisms of Thrive on these grounds. I won't speak for them, but you can read their statement there. Similarly, the emphasis on environmental management, independent of environmental regulation through compact growth and the transportation strategies, the park strategies, the housing strategies, Audubon Natural Society, Sierra Club have both indicated that they support the direction of Thrive. I'm not going to tell you all these groups support every detail of Thrive. They've proposed changes, but like anything, even I don't support everything in Thrive. It's a product of compromise and discussions among many stakeholders, many individuals over a period of a couple of years. But I think that it's clear there's broad support for this document among leaders on housing equity, climate, and other topics. What does Thrive say about the economy? I'll spend a little bit less time on this. Thrive, the important thing to remember is Thrive is the land use part of the county's economic development strategy. It's based on the idea that if you want to be a place where businesses want to locate, you have to be the kind of place where their employees want to live and work. That means walkable, vibrant, mixed-use neighborhoods, preferably with convenient access to transit, walkability, great parks and recreation. Quality place is the building block of economic development in a place that's not based on, for example, strip mining. If our economic future depends on our human capital, then human beings have to want to live here. That's the land use contribution to our economic development strategy. Economic opportunity, again, I'm not going to go through each point, but you can check it out. And if you'd like to discuss any of this, we can talk about it offline. I said before, Thrive has broad support. CASA, Montgomery Housing Alliance, Sierra Club, Audubon Society, Washington Area Bicycle Association, Jews United for Justice, Action Committee for Transit, all of Action in Montgomery, all these groups have indicated support for Thrive in one way or another. And we believe that it represents a consensus view among people who have studied these topics and make it their business every single day in and out to achieve the county's environmental, economic development, and racial and social equity goals. I would be happy to take your questions.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Anderson. Colleagues, please use the raise hand function if you have questions. Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Casey, thank you for being here this morning, and thanks for the presentation. I actually have a question on something unrelated to Thrive. Just sort of curious if you can talk a little bit through, the plan for the 270 corridor. And I think some of us were a little surprised to see that Mark Rail was not included in that plan. There's been a whole group of us really working on expansion in Annapolis, and we see it as sort of primed, especially with the federal investment. I was just curious if you could speak to the thought behind that.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Thank you. We have a plan. It has two major elements. One is to reimagine the Corridor Cities Transitway to make it more buildable, workable, and serve more people. I think that's very exciting because it offers the opportunity to get a really high quality transit connection into the Life Sciences Center and 270 corridor for Montgomery Village, for the Veers Mill Road corridor, all the way down to Wheaton. That's very exciting. That's something the previous conception of the CCT would not have done. And we believe it addresses a lot of the reasons why the CCT has not moved forward, because it was rather circuitous. It was designed to serve a lot of development that Johns Hopkins was talking about that has not materialized and looks like it may never materialize. So that's the first part. The second part is it emphasizes, and this is what you're getting at, Delegate Solomon, the value of planning a red line extension to Germantown. Now, this is not intended to diss MARC. We believe that MARC is useful and could be made better. But over the long term, if you were going to invest billions of dollars to try to get MARC to be a all day, both directions, high quality transit service, we believe that ultimately you'd find that it's still not in the place where the people are and the land use is that supports transit. So we're not saying don't invest in MARC. We're not saying that it's not important to incrementally improve it. But we're saying that over the long term, that red line to Germantown looks like the better major investment of that type in that to serve that travel need. And we can get into that some more if you'd like offline.
That would be great. Yeah, I think one of the things that concerned us was the feasibility of a metro expansion is probably much longer on the horizon than the potential for a third track on significant parts of the Brunswick line, or even, I mean, we know MTA is literally in the process of working on a Brunswick master plan that's going to increase service, even with the existing rolling stock that they've got. So yeah, would love to have that conversation, but appreciate the answer. And thanks for a lot of the work that you're doing in our community. We do have a couple of bond initiatives for a couple of parks in District 18 and appreciate the partnership.
Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Casey, for a very concise and insightful presentation and a tremendous amount of work that went into it. I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect plan that everybody likes. This is a great starting point to have these important conversations. Probably is a once in a generation kind of conversations about where we're going as a community. So my question is, where do you see the county council on this overall in terms of its urgency in implementing some of the great ideas that we all agree that need to be done, like yesterday, in order to make ourselves more competitive with our regional neighbors, especially that are more walkable, more transit friendly, more attractive to professionals and all of that. I'm just more interested in that than trying to strive for some perfect, blueprint. Thank you.
Yes, well, what they say about Montgomery County and paralysis by analysis, we're trying to avoid that. We wish that the county council had gotten to this last year. They did have some challenges with the pandemic and other issues. We delivered this plan in April of last year, and they didn't get to it until really the summer and fall. So now they're talking about pushing it a couple more months. I think that's fine. I'm confident this plan is going to get passed before the end of this council session.
Great. Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative. The question that I have is just about the issue of affordability. That's certainly one that when we talk about housing and our Montgomery County community that is always at the forefront. And I just wanted to get a sense from you on how you think the plans in Thrive just have any impacts around affordability and how it might touch on that issue in any way.
Thanks for that question. Yes, contrary to what some people have been saying, Thrive does address deeply subsidized housing for lowest income people, even homeless, even people who are unhoused. It addresses market rate housing for people who are more affluent and can afford to pay for unsubsidized market rate housing and everything in between. I blew through the slides and I'll send you the deck so you can take a look. If you want to read the whole plan, there's I believe over half a dozen recommendations just about the racial and socioeconomic equity issues around housing. That doesn't even count the other housing recommendations, which are more general, which also actually indirectly touch on racial and socioeconomic equity. affordable, deeply subsidized housing, more money for the HIF, using different construction types, using tax credits, introducing different housing types. That's been a controversial idea, including things like duplexes and triplexes, SROs, community land trusts. All these things are in Thrive. When I say we put everything in the kitchen sink on housing, I'm not kidding. We put the whole spectrum of ideas in there. And I think if you take a quick look, even at the top 10 that I put in the slideshow, much less the document, you're going to see that it addresses affordable housing, subsidized housing, income restricted housing in a deep and serious way. It also makes the argument, which I think is the source of some resistance, that we just need a lot more housing in general. And those of you who heard me before know that I believe strongly that over the long term, we can't subsidize our way out of this problem. We need to build more market rate housing. That's part of the solution. It's also true that we can't just have market rate housing, that we need to be concerned about naturally occurring affordable housing and subsidized housing, income restricted housing. So it's really an all of the above approach.
Delegate Barbe.
Thank you. I think you just answered my question. I'm very happy to hear you say that the most effective way to improve affordability is to have more housing of all kinds. So you answered my question. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a brief follow-up to that before I turn to the vice chair? It's actually about the last controversy from 4 years ago, and it may be a permanent question at this point, but do you know how many ADUs have actually been put in since the ADU law? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, I don't know offhand. We did look at this, I think, a year or two ago. And the good news was, I think we'd about doubled the number of ADUs, but I wouldn't even, it wasn't very big to begin with. And I think a lot of the quote unquote new ADUs were illegal ADUs that were brought into the system because now people could come in from the cold. They could get right with the permitting people, right? They could say, hey, I've had this ADU, please issue me a license and I'm gonna, be in conformity with the law. So, I mean, some people have said to me, special elected officials, why are you pushing on things like ADUs and duplexes and triplexes? It's not going to be that many units. That's true, but over time it matters. And I'd also say, if we can't do this, what can we do? Since over a third of our land area is zoned exclusively for single family houses, there's only about less than 3% that's zoned for multifamily and mixed use. At some point, we have to confront this problem that there's a very serious imbalance between the amount of land that we have set aside for single family houses and the amount of land we have set aside for multifamily and everything else. That's not to say that we have to do this all at once, but I think over the long term, it's something we have to confront.
Okay, well, that's not what I was saying. I was just asking if you had those numbers. So if you have those numbers and you're able to share them from last year, I would really appreciate it.
I think we could get an update for you, yeah.
Thank you. And let me just let Delegate Barbe have a second bite at the apple before we go to the vice chair.
No, I was just putting a thumbs up. I completely agreed with him.
Great. Vice Chair Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman Anderson, for being here with us this morning. I've been seeing reports in the press about investors buying up the housing stock and turning single family homes or townhomes into rental properties. And that's maybe contributing to the affordability problem for people who want to buy, maybe a first time home buyer. Do you all have any data about, to the extent this might be happening in our region in Montgomery County, and what the impact that might be having on the housing market, affordability of both homes to purchase and homes to rent?
There's no ready source of data on that. I can tell you that we haven't seen a ton of that kind of activity in Montgomery County yet, but I think that we're probably going to see it. And I think that this speaks to the issue of once housing becomes so difficult to afford, then large institutional investors with access to capital can come in and buy up single family, multifamily, all kinds of different housing and turn them into rentals. I would say in some ways, the likelihood of that happening on a large scale in Montgomery County is not great, at least in the near term, but I think it's a symptom of the bigger problem of we don't have enough housing, and that's pushing prices up and putting it out of reach for people. for reasons not just related to their income, but to their credit history and other factors. Hard to raise the money for a down payment, even if you could make the monthly payment. All those things are pushing in the direction of institutional investors coming in and turning single family houses into rentals.
Thank you.
Great. I do not see any other questions. Last call. Okay, well, Casey, thank you again for being with us on the presentation and working through those technical issues with us. Colleagues, just a reminder, this is our last regularly scheduled Friday delegation meeting, so you just have to keep an eye on your inbox for anything we have to do on an ad hoc basis. But really appreciate everybody's efficient work during the interim and during the session. It's been a very productive opportunity for us, and now we just got to convince our Senate colleagues to be just as productive. So we'll work on that. But thank you all for everything. Have a great Friday and weekend.